or good morning. If you're in another time zone, just to let you know, we're going to be recording the session. So if you don't want to be in the video, just keep your video off. I'm going to kick us off. I'm Monica Lesser. I'm the president of the Boston Terps Alumni Network. Thank you for joining today for our Career Week panel on standing out on LinkedIn and auditing your confidence. So we have Terps from all over the world joining us, and it would be fantastic to see where everybody's joining in from. So if you're comfortable adding into the chat box your graduation year and where you're based out of, what city, just so we can see where everybody's coming in from. And feel free to use the chat throughout. Our speakers will be taking Q&A at the end. So as you think of questions, you can send them over to our moderator, Anthony Caruso, who is one of our Zoom co-hosts. Our first speaker today, Kathy Vines, will be teaching us how to stand out among LinkedIn's 775 million users, which is a lot. So Kathy provides executive coaching, career coaching, LinkedIn strategies, resume writing, and much more to clients throughout the US and internationally. She launched her Boston-based career coaching business in 2013, following a 20-year career in human resources. She's also the owner of Clever Girl Organizing. She's a certified professional organizer, productivity specialist, and published author. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Bucknell University and an MBA from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Kathy loves creating clarity and aha moments for people, whether it's figuring out how they should spend the next 20 years of their career or how to best answer interview questions. After we hear from Kathy, we're going to hear from Jasmine Kelly, who will show us how to audit our confidence to land our dream job. Jasmine is a career confidence coach and industrial organizational psychology practitioner based in the Washington, D.C. area. Jasmine is a double Terp with both bachelor's and master's degrees in psychology from the University of Maryland. She founded her coaching business, Your Career Kickstart, for professionals who are ready to level up in their career. She uses psychological theories and practices and applies them to the job search process. She has a passion for creating programs in the workplace that help organizations thrive and help employees become their best selves. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to our first presenter, Kathy Vines.
Okay, thank you so much, Monica. And though I don't have it in my bio, I'm not a Terp, but I'm married to a Terp, so I'm a Terp by marriage, and I hope that counts for something here. I am excited to spend about 20 minutes with you all talking about LinkedIn and talking about it in a way that if you're brand new to LinkedIn, you'll learn a ton. If you've been on it for a while, it may get you thinking about what you've been doing, how you've been spending time on it, and hopefully you pick up some tips and tricks to help make your presence and your impact on LinkedIn stronger. As Monica said, there's almost 800 million people on LinkedIn. About a quarter of those are in the United States. That works out to about 2 of every 3 adults in the United States has a LinkedIn account, and about 1 in 3 claim to use it regularly. So there's a lot of people out there, whether that you view that as competition or opportunity, there's a ton in LinkedIn for you. So if you're here because you think of LinkedIn as a place to help you with your jobs and get a job or hire, great. If you're someone who thinks of LinkedIn as a place for a B2B space where you're talking about how do you represent your own business to sell to other businesses, you'll learn things here too. I could talk about LinkedIn for hours, but in 20 minutes, I want to go through the highlights. So let me hop in here. First thing I want you to know is I think of LinkedIn as an ecosystem, right? So often I hear from people saying, oh, it's LinkedIn, I got to work on my profile. And I tell them this story. I think of LinkedIn as an ecosystem And your profile is just part of that. Your profile, I talk a bit about it as your driver's license, right? You need a driver's license to drive for the most part. And you could get your test, pass your test, get your license, stick that in your pocket and never drive. You haven't really done anything. You've got your driver's license, but you can't do anything with it. That's the profile. Your network is your highway, right? How far, how exotic, how deep can you go? That's based on your network, based on how the quantity, the quality, and the diversity of the network that you have inside LinkedIn. And I call your car part here the engagement, right? This is what you do inside with others on LinkedIn. Whether that's public for all to see or private one-on-one, your engagement is what feeds the algorithm of LinkedIn. And I'm going to talk a lot about the algorithm as we go. You also get some GPS and mileage, which are stats. You can see who's looked at you, how many views of your posts have you had, all sorts of other things. So really, I want to talk about your profile and a little bit of network and a little bit of engagement today, but this is really the juice of where we're starting. The profile starts with, at the top, maybe a phrase you've heard before. It's called the introduction card. So it's everything from your URL at the very top, right, the web address, down through the bottom of this screen here. And of course, we're going to use my profile because it's easy enough for me to take screenshots. Let's talk about some of the things that come in here. So first, the URL. You can customize your URL. When you first signed up for LinkedIn, you got something that said first name dash last name slash 93ABZ27 or something like that. We can tell the difference between a more sophisticated LinkedIn user to somebody who just signed up and doesn't maybe know what they're doing in here before we even read anything on their page because they haven't customized their URL. It's great if you can claim your own name. You can see I have Kathy Vines organizer coach. It's a URL where people are going to be able to find me, so it's helping me be found even on the web. But I probably did that because Kathy Vines was already taken, so I added some things to it. At the end of this presentation, you're going to see I'm going to share with you a link to a web page that has a whole bunch of how-to resources, and how to customize your URL is going to be on that. Next, your photo. Profiles with photos always rank so much higher in search engines than profiles which don't. We always want to see something professional, friendly, kind of armpits and above. No props, no sunglasses, no hats, no glasses of wine from the wedding picture you're being taken at, no cutting out your spouse out of a photo from your vacation, none of that. You simple, get a professional photo if that's what you want, but it's so easy to take great looking photos with your phone now. Make sure you have something that's current. Because if you're interviewing for a job, you're doing it on Zoom these days, and if you don't look like your photo, they're gonna wonder what's up. The banner, which you see over my head, this is the banner that you can customize as well. Most people, you're gonna look on their profiles and you're gonna see this gray swath. This is a place where you can put photos, you can put a quote, you can put a testimonial that somebody gave you. Information here that brings visual interest. So if somebody found you in their search results, they're going to want to learn more. It's kind of like the welcome mat of your profile that allows you to do some branding. On that resources list I'm giving you, it's also going to say, how do you make that banner? So look out for that one. Connections. You may already know this. Once you get to 501 connections, this mark over here says 500 plus. If you get to 5,000, it's still going to say 500 plus. You don't see the real followers until you go a little further down the page. But this is another signal to your network and to people looking at your profile that you're invested in LinkedIn as a networking tool and you've been building your own network. Your headline is probably the most important part here. It's this 220 characters, but I don't recommend that you go that deep. A line or two of information that is how you can set yourself apart in terms of your brand. So sometimes you might see people put a brand statement, like you might say, I help Terp alum get great profile, get returns from their LinkedIn profile, right? It might be a sentence like that. Or it might be like I have today, a series of keywords that I think will draw people in, not only in terms of search, but when they see my profile, they'll quickly understand a little bit more about what I'm about. Whatever it is, it's not my job title, right? It's not financial analyst at Smith Corp, right? It's something that really tells them more about who I am as a professional candidate, as an employee at large, what my entire professional brand's about. You saw on the bottom that open to, and you probably see it when you're on LinkedIn, right? Maybe you see the green halo around somebody's face saying open to work, hashtag open to work. This is a setting that if you're actively looking for a job, or if you're hiring, this is another place to go and you want people to know you're hiring. You click on open to, you select finding a new job, and you answer some questions about what kind of job. And then you can either select tell the whole world I'm open to work, or just tell recruiters. When you have your profile set to open to work on either side, you will end up higher in search results and higher in what recruiters call the likely to engage answer around who should I be reaching out to for this job. So this is a great trick to know about. You can set it up so that just recruiters see it and the rest of your network doesn't, if you're concerned about being kind of doing your search on the down low. When you scroll down a little bit, you get to the about section. Sometimes people don't even have the about section filled out, and this is like the essay portion of the exam, right? And it's where you get to tell your story. You can do it in first person. I did this, I do that, I have a track record of doing this. You don't just copy and paste from your resume, all that, very legalese kind of sounding language. You do want to put keywords. This is a key area where searches are going to come and find content. So if somebody's looking for someone like you want to make sure that they're finding you because you've got the right keywords in here. You'll see I have some funky font here, right? I've got a little bold and italics. This is something you might see sometimes. Again, I'm going to have that link on the resource of how to do that. What I want you to know is what it's really doing is importing a little picture. It's not actually words. It looks like words to you and me. So I would never put an important keyword in a funky font. But again, it can be a way to draw in visual interest and do the most important thing that I want them to do on this page, which is click see more so that they can get into the other 2,000 characters that I have here. Below that, there's going to be a section called featured. You can bring in things from the outside. Have you been featured in a video? Have you published a paper? Were you interviewed on the news? Is there an article written about you? Or even inside LinkedIn, have you written a post that you're really proud of that got a lot of attention, that speaks to what you're all about? You can link that here. It's kind of like your highlight reel to show more about you and your brand and what you're able to create. So again, whether you're a job candidate or you're doing B2B work inside LinkedIn, this is a fantastic place to showcase what you're about. Before I leave the profile, I want to talk just to remind you a couple of things. Remember, with your experience section, keywords, but also you want to make sure you're linked directly to that company page. You can tell you're not if you've got this that same kind of gray square. That either means you're not linked to the actual page, or that company doesn't have a logo or a company page, or you linked to it so long ago you didn't realize the company updated it. You can go and refresh that, and once we see the picture, that means that if somebody is searching for, I'm looking for somebody with experience at Harvard, if you're not actually linked at Harvard, it's not going to know it as well as those people who are in that Harvard network. Make sure you collect the right industry. If you're a financial analyst in higher ed, and you're up for being a financial analyst anywhere, you don't want to say your industry is higher ed. You want to say your industry is finance, because that's how people are going to do searches for professionals like you. Your skills section, you can build this based on not just what other people say. This is the one where they say, oh, Kathy Vine, she's great at this. You get those reports back. You actually can modify this so that only the skills you want to show, your top 3, are up there, even if it's not your highest rated one. People tell me, oh, she's great at HR. I've been out of HR for 9 years from corporate HR. That's not what I'm promoting on LinkedIn. So I get to move that down and promote what I really do want people to see how I'm all about. You can still see it in the full link in the list if you click see more, but it's not the brand statement there. Recommendations, similar to endorsements, these are your social proof where people know, let me tell you why she's a great why she was a great employee, why she was a great manager, why he was a great client, why he was a great vendor. That social proof can go a long way in terms of getting people to want to learn more and maybe bring you in for an interview. And video and audio is continuing to evolve. Audio is already great. If you have a name that's difficult to pronounce, or you find people struggle to pronounce, you can put in a pronunciation audio there. You can also now put in a profile that's not a photo, but a video, and you say, hi, I'm Kathy. This is what I do. This is why you should reach out. I think LinkedIn is going to continue to evolve both of these. So once you're feeling great about your profile, these are great areas to expand upon. And finally, make sure that you're updating it somehow every 3 months. The LinkedIn algorithm doesn't like stale profiles. That seems to be their shelf life for staleness. So if you haven't updated your profile in the last 3 months, tonight's the night for you to do it. Now let's move on to engagement. If you remember, this is kind of the car and what you do inside LinkedIn. And the goal here is you want to be seen in the feeds of your network and the feeds of their network as an expert in your field. Here's the key part, right? Be seen. This is the algorithm. How am I making sure that LinkedIn is spreading my information around, that I'm getting seen by the people I want to be seen with, that if somebody's doing a search for somebody like me, I'm showing up? LinkedIn rewards the behavior that makes LinkedIn a place to be. And how do they reward you? By being higher in the algorithm for search results. Again, I don't care if you're looking for somebody to do who does your kind of business, if you're looking to hire someone, if you're just doing to try some kind of networking, the search results matter. I think of engagement in 3 buckets. Cheer is all that simple stuff, liking a post, giving the heart, even doing some commenting. That means a little bit more work, but this is that cheer work where you're not doing a lot of creation, but you're making sure you're supporting other people's posts by engaging in them. Curating, this is I'm bringing things in from the outside, or maybe I'm sharing internally to feed my network, right? So I can educate and entertain. So much of being in LinkedIn is about serving our network, not just hoping that our network's going to be there for us when we need it. And then the last one is create, right? So are you creating your own posts? Are you publishing articles? Are you creating native video? All these other things. Obviously a higher level of risk and involvement in content creation, but that's kind of that scope going from cheer to curate to create that allows you to control a lot more of this engagement and getting more and contributing more to LinkedIn. Posting is kind of the basic area in which people will put information out there. We all know that. We go into our feeds. I want to give you some posting hints. First, here's the bad news. For most people, when you post on LinkedIn, 8 to 10% of your network will see your post. And who's that 8 to 10? It's going to be the people that you probably are most often engaging with. So if you're not engaging with a diverse part of your network, you're going to see the same things. If you're only engaging with people just like you, not people who are going to hire you, they're probably not going to see your activity. So what can we do to increase the success and the travel, and we call it the reach of your posts? First of all, we think the sweet spot's about 1,200 to 2,000 characters. You want to start with a great headline and something that gets them to click the see more button, right? You so often, you know what you do in there. You know what makes you hit see more and what doesn't. Setting things up as a story and being able to grab that can help with that. Pictures can help, even multiple pictures. Slide decks are really helpful. Native video inside LinkedIn, helpful. I'll tell you what's a little less helpful, which is unfortunate, is external links. If you link to something, right, link to an article, link to your blog, link somewhere else, LinkedIn actually doesn't love that, because what you're doing is saying, hey, let's leave LinkedIn and go over here together. LinkedIn rewards the activity that makes people stay inside LinkedIn. So it'll still get reach, but it might just get less reach than some of those other methods. And if you do a picture, make sure it's relevant. Tag people that you think might engage with you. And hashtags, they're great. Use 3 to 5 of them, not more, not less. That's kind of the sweet spot. If you don't want to post, but you still want to be engaging, but you don't want to create your own posts, right? I get it. Make sure you're commenting on other people's posts, tag other people, bring them in saying, hey, Monica, I think this is a topic that is really of interest to you. This reminds me of that project you're on. Love to get your voice in here. So pull other people into different posts within your network. Get involved with groups and events and comment on those. That's another way to drive that up. And even if you don't want to do any of this, make sure you're using LinkedIn to drive a one-on-one strategy with your network. You're here for a reason. Make sure you're getting out of it and working with that network the best way you can. A couple notes about your network. As you're growing it, you might think, I don't know who to add. I don't know where to grow. There are 3 categories. People you definitely know. People you don't know, but you have a genuine connection with, right? That in the real life, mutual friends, that kind of thing. Or people you don't know, you don't have a natural connection with, but they would make sense both for you and for them to be mutually connected. All of these are best accompanied by a personal note, which is easier to do on the web version than it is on the phone version, unfortunately. So send a personal note when you can. Don't be salesy. When you meet with people in person, in real life, we are going to do that a lot more soon. Um, you meet somebody new saying, "Hey, can I add you to my LinkedIn network?" Then they know the information. They're either going to say, "Oh, I'm not on LinkedIn, don't bother," or "Yeah, that's great." And so when you send that invitation over, you get to send that personal note that with them. It was great to meet you last week. Would love to stay connected here. By the way, we talked about this and this and this. Build that network. Make sure this network is working from you, not just by clicking LinkedIn. Always remember, it's not who you know, but often it's who they know. It's our second degree connections that are getting us our new opportunities. And this is what makes LinkedIn so rich. As I mentioned, I've got a page for you about a whole bunch of LinkedIn resources. If you go to my website, www.kathyvines.com/terpslinkedin, you'll see links to all of this. Don't just yet, make sure that you're paying attention to Jasmine as we come next. But if you feel like you're going to go there ahead, we'll put it in the chat box too, and we'll remind you at the end of our Q&A what that link is. But thank you so much. I am excited to just scratch the surface with you. If you want deeper dives and more information on LinkedIn, there's more information on my page about how to get there with me. So I'm going to toss it over to Jasmine now.
Thanks, Kathy. All right. So in my presentation, we're going to talk about leveling up your confidence. Oftentimes, the biggest barrier to our success will be our lack of confidence. And so what I want to do is do a confidence audit with you all. Let's talk about how do we increase our confidence and land those jobs. All right. So first, we have to make sure that we're articulating our value. If we're not talking about how valuable we are to employers, then they won't know how valuable we are. And you could be the best candidate, but if you don't know how to talk about your skills confidently, employers won't be able to see your value. So how do we talk about ourselves? First things first is we want to document every accomplishment. And so what does that mean? A lot of times we will have a resume and we'll just list our tasks. I answered the phones, I edited Excel spreadsheets, I did some research. Well, that's cool, but a lot of people can do those things. And so what you want to figure out is what were the results of those accomplishments? And so we'll talk about how that's really important and where we can start documenting those accomplishments. You want to be able to sculpt your experience. Now, what does that mean? Sculpting your experience means talking about what you've done, as well as sculpting your tasks. So job sculpting. And a lot of times that's harder to do when you're in a position where you're not currently doing the job that you want to do, but there's ways in which you can get around that. And so let's first talk about sculpting your experience. So how do we reframe what we've done already in order to make it sound valuable to the employers? And so you can sculpt your experience on your resume, on LinkedIn, in your interviews, in your elevator pitch, when you're trying to, introduce yourself to someone. Sculpting your experience, meaning, you're not just saying, "Oh, I was this, I did research," but, you did research that led to contracts. You did research that led to deals for your organization. And so a lot of times we have to think about reframing our experiences to make them valuable for our next opportunity. And so a lot of times we'll be transitioning into a position that may not be exactly what we're doing now. So using what you've done and reframing that experience to be valuable to that next employer. And so I found this tweet. It says, "Millennials love referring to a customer as a quote unquote client. A dash of fabricated importance goes a long way." And the only problem I have with this tweet is the word fabricated. A lot of times it's not fabricated. Sometimes just reframing a specific word or phrase in what we've done means the world to our resume. It actually, it does add some importance to our resume. It adds importance to our experiences. And so don't be afraid to change a few words in your resume to match what the job descriptions are saying. And so, yes, you may have, did customer service. Well, if you're looking to work with clients, if you're looking to do something in consulting, maybe, changing those words around, it really shows how valuable you view your experience, and you're able to articulate that experience to those hiring managers. And so next is sculpting your task. And so you can reframe what you've already done, but how do we frame what we're going to do? How do we make sure that whatever our next opportunity is, we already have those experiences? And so that could be through job sculpting where you are. So getting on projects, shadowing someone, or cross training are just three ways that you can shape your experience that you're doing, shape your tasks. What are you doing actively to be proactive about, gaining those skills that you need? And so a lot of times you can find someone in your organization, or maybe, hopping on projects and taking the lead of those projects. If you're looking for a managerial position in your next opportunity, how many projects are you leading? How many tasks are you taking ownership of? And so that's what we mean when we're talking about job sculpting, as well as sculpting your experience. Because again, if you're articulating your value, then they'll understand how valuable you are as an employee. So next is reframing your resume. And this is one of the most important things, because that's what these hiring managers are seeing. How do we reframe our resume to make sure that the words that we're saying are equal to, valuable experiences? And so let's talk about, how do we reframe our resume with our experiences that we've already gained? And so we want to make sure, again, remember we said document those accomplishments. We want to make sure that our resume is results and accomplishments based. And so I found this other tweet. It said, how would you write, "I changed a light bulb" on your resume? And someone said, single-handedly managed the successful upgrade and deployment of new environmental illumination system with zero cost overruns and zero safety incidents. Now, these are two very different sentences. And you can see that that second one, you may have to read to figure out what in the world they're talking about, but it makes it seem valuable. And if you're actually looking at it, it's like this person did a lot for this organization. And so if the organizations that you're applying for don't understand your value, then, and if you're not going to be able to get that job. And so you have to articulate, what have you done to actually help this organization? Your confidence in your own abilities is extremely important, because no one will advocate for you but you. And so Google has this really great resume formula that I would suggest you using when you're constructing your resume. And it says, I accomplished X relative to Y by doing Z. Now, this shifts the focus from tasks to accomplishments. And so let's break this down. What does this mean? So I accomplished X. So what happened as a result of what you were doing? A lot of times we'll just, again, list tasks. Oh, I did some research. I answered the phones. I talked to customers. But what was accomplished from that? What happened as a result of what you did? The next part is relative to why. Give some context when it comes to what you're talking about. Give quantitative data. Give some percentages, because a lot of times a small win at a large company is a big win at a smaller company. And so giving percentages creates that value. It makes, the hiring managers, perk up and say, wow, they actually did this. They actually increased this, or they decreased this. So giving those percentages and giving some context to what you've done is really important. And the last part is by doing Z, and that's the task itself. And so now we're shifting our, focus to the accomplishment instead of just the task. You have to show what you've done, but also show what happened as a result. And so you want to make sure you're including these three parts. And I would say especially focus on the accomplishments aspect. And so let's talk about this. Let's give an example. Let's say you want to go into learning and development, and you've done some some employee engagement programs. You want to make sure that the employees are engaged. You want to make sure that they are doing, the training sessions and things like that. And so you are saying that, hey, I've actually done this before. I've done some employee engagement before. And so this says I developed 7 employee engagement programs. Well, that's cool, but you haven't really given anything, for them to say, wow, that's impressive. And so that's really cool that you've done these programs, you've created these programs, but there's other people who have done this exact same thing. And so when we take Google's resume formula, it says, I reduced the rate of turnover by 27% within 2 years through the development of employee engagement programs. And so this is a huge difference between, just developing the programs. You actually did the company a huge favor and helped with the reduction of turnover. And that's huge. And we gave a percentage. And so this is what I mean by focusing on the accomplishment and being able to give some context with that. What did you do and what was the result? So next is you want to make sure that you're only including relevant skills and experiences. When you're including things that have nothing to do with that job, companies will realize that, this person didn't tailor the resume. This person doesn't really care about this job. They're just looking for the next job. They're just looking for, whatever comes their way. And so you want to make sure that you're only including the things that they care about. And so it may be cool. Oh, hey, you did this thing over here and you did some, customer service. But if this is not a customer service facing job, then don't include those things that aren't relevant on your resume. Because again, you want to make sure that you're tailoring your resume and you're talking about the accomplishments that they care about. And so when you're sculpting your experience and when you're talking about what you've done and you're talking about, what you're doing currently in your job, you want to talk about those things that the company actually, wants to bring you to their organization to do. And so again, if it's not something that they are interested in, don't include that in your resume. And lastly, you want to make sure that you're structuring your resume so that it fits your story. There's no one else who has the same skills, knowledge, ability, and experiences that you do. And so what you want to make sure is that you are creating the picture that they want to hear. Create the picture that you want people to know about you. And so when it comes to, using those psychological theories, I think of using word association. When someone thinks of your name, what do you want them to know about you and your career and your professionalism? For me, I want people to know that, I affect the workplace. I want people to know that, no matter where people go, they are in the right place. They feel valued in their workplace. And that starts with, picking the right job for them, as well as helping, organizations become more engaged and helping them to make employees feel valued. And so for me, that's what I want people to know about me. When people think of my name, I want them to think, employee engagement, career coach, things like that. And so how are you framing your story when it comes to all of your professional platforms? How are you talking about yourself and your experiences and your professional life to your coworkers, to your friends, on LinkedIn, on your resume, in your interviews? So structuring your resume so that it fits your story. Be consistent on your resume, on your LinkedIn, when you're talking to people, make sure that you're being consistent and you're structuring your resume so that it fits the story that you want people to know. So the smarter you work, the better your results will be. If you're lacking opportunity, create that opportunity for yourself. Recognize the gap and put yourself in spaces where you can't fail. So your success is all up to you. Set your goal and make it happen. And so that is all for me. Thank you all so much for joining. And here is where you can connect with me, with my organization. Here's my website, my Instagram, and my email address.
Thank you so much, Jasmine and Kathy. So we're going to move into Q&A. So I'm going to pass it over to Anthony now. Thank you for that. You covered so much information. I'm trying to take it all in still.
We're fantastic. Yes. We have some conversation topics, but there are, since we're talking to Jasmine here, there's a couple of questions that have come in over the last few minutes we can hop right into. So the first question is from Izzy Scratchich. I apologize, that's probably wrong, but Izzy asks, what if adding only relevant jobs results in big career gaps on the resume?
So it's not necessarily adding relevant jobs, it's relevant experience. And so there's a difference. So making sure that you're putting those jobs, those organizations that you've worked for, but what have you done in those organizations that are relevant to what you're applying to? And so a lot of times that takes a lot of introspection, a lot of deep thought. Oftentimes we don't think that we have the experience that we need for that next position, but sometimes we do. And so think about what you've done, whether it be, let's say you want to, the next position is talking about survey design. And you're like, well, I haven't really done that in my last position. But sometimes survey design is literally, thinking about what process is not working. And you're asking 3 of your coworkers, hey, a few questions. What did you think about this? Let's evaluate this program. And sometimes that is, designing a survey. You're changing your processes. And so a lot of times you have to think about, what are those small things that I've done that are relevant to what I want to do? And so always, you want to make sure that you're keeping, you don't want to, create gaps in your resume, again, because you don't want the hiring manager to have biases about you. So what you want to do is think about those things that you've done that may not necessarily be, at the top of your mind, but think about all the little tasks that you've done, all the little things, all the little projects that you've done that have to do with that next job.
Jasmine, can I add to that?
Yeah.
I think going back to the question around what if it creates gaps in the resume, if you have a chapter of your experience that you really can't figure out how to make relevant, that's also okay. Sometimes you can't do that. That doesn't mean leave that entire employment chapter off your resume. You would just minimize it, and you're not going to distract your reader by putting like, well, but I did these things. Like if these things aren't helping you get your next job, you can just talk about, I was employed during these times. This was my job title, basic description. You don't need to distract from your sculpted focus. But if you really can't make it work, it doesn't mean leave that job completely off your resume.
Exactly. And I just thought of another thing. One thing that, and somebody actually just asked the question I see about the resume structure. When it comes to, focusing on the accomplishments rather than, the chronological order of what you've done or the gaps, worrying about gaps like that, sometimes sending in a functional resume is the best case scenario. And so sometimes the functional resume doesn't work for the applicant tracking system, but if you're reaching out to, which you should be, reaching out to the hiring manager or one of the recruiters or somebody who is on that team, and you're sending in their resume saying, hey, can I get 30 minutes of your time for an informational interview? Send them your functional resume, and that will highlight the overarching categories and the themes that job has. And so that's where your experience will be at the bottom of the resume. So that's not the most shining thing on your resume.
And while we're on the topic of resumes, I just wanted to, Liam asked kind of a similar question in that vein. He's asking, how can I structure my resume to fit my story when I'm trying to change careers?
Yeah, functional resume is always my go-to because, again, it highlights those accomplishments. And a lot of times what I do is 3 main themes or 3 main categories. And so for me, since I'm someone who's in learning development and employee engagement and things like that, that's what I'll have as my categories. If I'm applying to that type of job, if somebody's applying to that type of job, you list those 3 main themes that are in that job description, and you highlight the skills and experiences that you've gotten from your previous experiences, from your previous jobs, related to those topics.
Perfect. Just gonna a couple quick more rapid fire. You just talked about chronological versus skills. Ali also asks, should I include rescinded offers (parentheses due to COVID) on my resume?
Could you repeat that question again?
Sorry. Ali McGee asks, should I include rescinded offers on my resume? And she clarifies, such as due to COVID or presumably other factors out of your control.
Not rescinded offers, no.
Okay.
No, I can see how it might be a topic of conversation if you're in an interview situation and they're asking, so tell us about how your job search going, or where have it worked, or how do you find yourself in a position of looking for a job today, right? It might be an anecdote that you share if you got an interview, but I wouldn't be putting it in a resume or cover letter or LinkedIn.
All right. Good question from Derek here. Derek asks, how can this sculpting, I think he's referring to Jasmine, what you're talking about, how can this sculpting change face-to-face interactions and the conversation during interviews?
I would say when you're preparing for your interviews, make sure that you have exactly what you're going to say. A lot of times what we'll do is I'll have, my clients list out all of the things they want to talk about. What are your accomplishments that are relevant to this job description? And then you want to make sure that you are talking about exactly those things. So no matter what question comes up, you know what you want to talk about. You know what you're going to say, because these are the main accomplishments that they're going to care about. And so when it comes to sculpting your experience and how you're reframing what you're talking about, I would say always use the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. And a lot of times that will frame every single interview question that you have, and you already have the categories or the situations or the experiences that you want to talk about. So make sure that you're using that. And again, it's accomplishments based. What were the results? So the same way that you're talking about your resume or you're writing your resume is the same way that you're going to be talking about your experience in that interview or when you're trying to get the job. Talk about those highlights. What have you done? How are you valuable to them?
And I think of the two pieces of advice that I give with my clients when we're focusing on interview prep. The first is, how do you prepare for the worst question in an interview, which is, so tell me about yourself, right? That's the first place where I think that sculpting and knowing what your story is and that branding comes into play, of making sure you're teeing that off. The other thing I tell people is, what are the 3 things that are so critical that you know you want people to know about you before you leave that interview? And how are you going to make sure you work that into an answer, even if nobody asks you a direct question about it? So both of those things, playing off of Jasmine's point about, you got to know yourself and know your stories and know the accomplishment, the impact of those stories. But you also have that skill of, so how am I going to bring it up? How am I going to control or influence the flow of the conversation to make sure you get a chance to tell those stories?
Great. So a handful of LinkedIn-based questions now, just to kind of go down the line. I'll start right at the top. So first from Joan. Joan's asking, if you're returning to the workforce after a break to raise a family, how far back do I list? I'm guessing Joan means either career or resume in general on LinkedIn.
So I think there's 2 answers. There's a LinkedIn answer and a resume answer. LinkedIn, it can be helpful if you go back in time. Again, if you've got really relevant job experience to what you want to do next, or you got a really strong network from that time frame, right? You want to make sure somebody knows you used to work at Google, you used to work at Microsoft, you used to do this thing. If it's a kind of a marquee company, you want to do that. It's also okay to leave things off from your past, knowing, and this is the same thing with resume, in most cases, people care about what you've been doing for the last 10 years. But more and more, and I'm seeing this now show up on LinkedIn more, people are showing breaks in service, and they're calling it homeschooling during COVID, right? Like life care during COVID. And they are putting 6 months, a year and a half as a break in service, and they're calling it like where they were in their alibi. So it's okay also to really put, took a break for raising family, for elder care, other things like that. It's a lot more common and understandable and acceptable than maybe you would have found on LinkedIn even 3 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm seeing a lot of people do that where they're talking about, homeschool instruction, listing, the different things that activities they were doing with their children, because that, again, that's experience is relevant. When you're working with kids, you're working with people. And so working with people, you're going to do that in any job that come across. And so make sure that you are talking about your experience, because again, that's unique experience as well. But be confident in that. Don't be ashamed that you've taken some time off, because you're really not taking time off. You're doing work, you're doing things, and you're doing great things. And so making sure that you are explaining that and articulating that to where you see that it's valuable, and making sure that they know that that's valuable work that you're doing.
Yeah, that's excellent. Netsi has a question here and asks, or any tips on how I should structure my LinkedIn profile / resume as an independent contractor?
So it would be helpful, I think, to understand if the goal is to always only be an independent contractor, or if it's I've been an independent contractor and I need to couch that in some way, but I'm really looking for employment. So I'll answer briefly both ways, depending what your situation is, Not so you can kind of take a look. It's really okay to say you're an independent contractor, you're looking for projects, consultants, consulting engagements, assignments, things like that. You talk about the nature of the work and the activities that you want to be focusing on, and the impact of how you've been able to impact other companies through an independent contractor relationship in the past. As we all know, there are lots of companies that love to work with independent contractors for lots of different factors. So showing how you've been effective, cost effective, made an impact really quickly, hit the ground running, knew what you were doing as you came in the door, able to easily integrate within an organization. All those are going to be good activities to have that. So you can talk about not only the what, but the how in which you've been able to engage as an independent contractor for both LinkedIn and resume. Hopefully that gets at what you were asking.
Great. I'm going to go out of order here because Anton just popped up, I think, a question that feeds into this a little bit. Anton asks, following up on listing relevant positions, what is your view on listing work experiences from during college if they are relevant to the position, even if you're 5+ years out of school?
Jasmine, you want to answer that? I'll follow up.
Yeah, sorry, froze really second, so I'm reading the question again. I would say definitely talk about work experience from college. And here's what I usually tell people. It's up to you what you want to do, but I think a lot of the times organizations value your experience that sounds more like professional or more like from the workplace or whatever. And so sometimes changing your title to a more functional title is the best way to go about it. Again, that could be the difference between you getting the job and you not, or the difference in your salary that they're offering you. And so I would say don't be afraid to change a few words in your title. If your title sounds a little more like an intern position instead of like an actual full-time worker, then change your wording around. And so for me, what I did back in I worked in the Office of Resident Life, and I put and my title was a peer dialogue leader. And so what I changed it to was diversity, equity, and inclusion dialogue facilitator. And so again, doing the same thing, it's the same title, but it sounds different. And so it sounds more important to the hiring managers, even though I'm doing the same thing. I'm leading these dialogues, sometimes changing the words around to a more functional title. What were you like functionally doing can really help, and again can be the difference in you getting the opportunity or not, or how much they offer you. Because if they're saying, oh, that you seem like an entry-level position or an entry-level person or something like that, they may say, oh, we're going to give you this lower salary or something. And so I tell people, don't be afraid to change your title around a little bit. Now, don't be dramatic. Don't say that you were the manager when you were really just an intern, but, changing a few words around so it doesn't sound like it was, a college student position. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think if the opportunity is really relevant to what you want to do, because you talked about 5+ years out of college, right? I think of 5 years out of college and 5 years plus almost like a little bit of a shift between, different plateau. And so if you're over 5 years out of college and it's really relevant to what you want to do, I think it's fine to include it. I have a client right now who's probably out of school 8 years, and he's in social media management and event management. But his first jobs out of college weren't, but that's where he is now. But in college, he actually had a really big job with the student government, bringing in all of the speakers and doing all the marketing and all of that work for that. So we actually put that back on his resume because it honestly was the best experience he had had going back into his past, because those first years out of college weren't. I think once you get to 10 years out of college, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of value for college experience. If all of that experience you've been doing since then is relevant, then I'm not sure it's getting you anything more than your most recent professional experience, in my opinion.
Great. So I'm going to move up to George here. George has some really, I'm very interested to hear this answer as well. So he's asking, in regards to LinkedIn posts, are they opinion? Are they educated/expert discourse on a topic, or something else? And following up, are you held accountable for researching statements in posts?
So let me answer the first one. They can be anything. I can post opinion. I can post my personal experience. I can post facts. I think, as with any kind of written communication, remember this is out on the internet, so it's for all to see. I think it's important to be able to stand by what you're posting. And so the idea of researching it, I think I need to understand more context, right? I don't think I'm posting things. But for instance, if I'm going to send a note saying, hey, there's 775 million people on LinkedIn, I'm going to put in their source and I'm going to link it to the page on LinkedIn statistics where I got that information. So if I'm putting in facts, I'm citing sources. Hopefully that gets at the research question, but it really can be a blend. And I'll hear sometimes complaints from people saying, oh, it's getting too much like Facebook. People are putting too much personal information out there. I usually challenge those people and say, I don't think you wanted to put things out there in the first place, right? That sounds like a good excuse. But I do think it's how people get engaged, start having conversations, pull people in. They put challenging call to actions, or maybe a post that says, this crazy thing happened. How do you feel about this crazy thing? It's because engagement matters. Hope that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say, it really depends on who you want to be. Again, how are you painting your picture? What do you want people to know about you? If you're transitioning into a new field and you want people to know that, hey, I'm somebody who's passionate about this topic, I'm passionate about this, then talk about that. If you want to write a LinkedIn article, that's a great way to show that you're educated and you're passionate about that field, or about those topics. I would say, I've seen a lot of different things. It's who you want to be. What do you want people to know about you? What do you want to share? Do you want to share, your skills? Do you want to share and show your education? I've seen people do polls like, hey, what are your thoughts on this, and have people vote on different things. And so it's really, what do you want people to know about you, and how do you want people to engage with your with your post or with your work. So again, creating that picture. If you want people to know that you are someone who's all about academia and education, then all of your posts and all of the people that you're interacting with and the things that you're talking about should be about that. So I would say, stay on brand if you're trying to promote yourself as a valuable employee, as an educated employee. But it's really up to you how much or how little you want to post and what types of things you want to post. But be creative and, just be consistent with the theme of what you're posting.
Sorry, I was muted. So a couple more questions. I know we're getting up to the end here, and if anyone else has some last minute questions, pop them in the chat there. Chang asks, so if you have a position that is posted and you can match, say, 8 out of the 10 posted qualifications, should you still go ahead and apply for that job?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. because if you're meeting all of the requirements, you are overqualified. And so you want to be you want to be applying for those jobs because, they're going to train you on the rest of the things anyway. And again, your experience is probably relevant to what they're asking for. So think about, again, maybe you do have all 10 of those things. You just have to think about and do a deep dive, be introspective about what you've done. But I would say 100% apply for that job, because again, there are people who are confident about their skills and only have 6 out of the 10. And sometimes those are the people who get the job because they're so confident and they can articulate their skills and they have that charm. So I'd say, yeah, if you have 8 out of 10, that's amazing. Apply for
Yeah,
those jobs.
I was gonna say that in general, I say yes. The only caveats, if you can't say that you have experience with their first or second bullet, which are probably their most important parts, you may not shine against your competition. And if there's something that's really seems to be critical about the job, like requires fluent Portuguese and you don't speak Portuguese, like that one's going to be a deal breaker. So it isn't just how many did I check off, should that be good enough? You should be able to tell, like, can I get enough information from this job description to understand how I might be standing out against the competition? Which doesn't mean don't apply, just if you don't get a call, that might not be so surprising.
Awesome, thank you. Derek has a great question here. He's asking from the psychology perspective, are there any approaches / Jedi mind tricks we need to display to be sure that we're exuding confidence and to convince a hiring manager we're up for the role? Are there any relational dynamics to cultivate in the room?
I would say Jedi mind tricks is interesting. I would say there are just a few things that you have to do, like just be charming, be yourself, be personable, and always asking for an informational interview when you're applying to a job. I always say, if you're not going to reach out, then don't apply to the job. Don't bother applying to the job. Reach out to the hiring manager, reach out to the recruiter, whoever it is, somebody on the team, and reach out to them and show your personality. Ask them about the job description. And really, what you're really doing is, yes, you're getting more information about the position, but they're getting to see who you are. And so if you're talking to somebody who is on that team, they may be more willing to send your resume over to the hiring manager, or put you on the candidate list for interviews. And so I would say it's not really like this secret to what you're doing or how you promote yourself. It's really just being genuinely yourself, and showing that you are professional, showing that you are someone who is charismatic. You can talk, you could have a conversation, and you're proactive about what you want. So I would say the real, the best thing to do is always reaching out for that informational interview, because a lot of times that can turn into an actual interview, because they're interviewing you. They're looking at how you answer questions, how you speak to people, how do you talk about your experience. So I would say that would be the best advice, is just being yourself, being personable, and reaching out beyond just sending in your application or just sending in your resume.
All right, great. Well, I think we're right up to that 8 o'clock time, and I don't see any more questions coming in. So unless anyone's got any quick things, I turn it over to I think Monica. Are you gonna close us out?
Yeah, and I see someone's asking about the recording. So yes, the recording is going to be posted on YouTube. The Alumni Association is actually doing a whole playlist of different sessions that are happening this week for Career Week. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And I know that we're going to be sending some resources and Jasmine and Kathy's contact info out. So keep an eye out for that as well. But that concludes our session. And I just want to thank our speakers once again. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Kathy, for lending your expertise and walking us through all this great content. And thank you to our board members, Anthony Saruso and Rob Vines, for organizing the Zoom. And thank you all for joining, and hope to see you at another event soon. Take care.
Great. Thanks, Monica. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.